Teal dear, Rebecca Watson does not understand Gamergate or notyourshield. Let's look at why.
You may already be familiar with the Gamergate phenomenon, which basically goes something like this.
I really hope you're not planning to oversimplify this down to misogynies while missing half of the story and evidence in front of you.
A female game developer made a game called Depression Quest.
Well, she didn't really make, she used a drag-and-drop HTML editor. I mean, that is the coding equivalent of doing a paint by numbers and calling yourself an artist, but I'll let that slip for now.
In which the player is meant to experience what it's like to live with depression on a day-to-day basis.
It fails horribly and reads much more like an angsty teenage girl's diary, while giving you no actual options to deal with your depression and forcing you into a failure state when they could have just added an option to either seek help or shoot self in head, all of which are completely valid ways of dealing with depression.
She was immediately harassed by mostly male gamers who felt that the game was not worthy.
Actually, there was a single thread on a single website where a bunch of people who actually suffer from depression played her game and said, "What the fuck, this does not accurately reflect my life's experience." Some outside person then emailed Zoe a link to that thread, and she then decided to take it upon herself to call it harassment.
Her ex-boyfriend then posted a salacious tell-all in which he accused her of cheating on him, including sleeping with a video game journalist.
And in that same post, she actually admits to all of it, even then going so far as to say that by her own definition, she raped her boyfriend.
The journalist in question had never actually reviewed Depression Quest, but the gamers who were harassing her used this as a further excuse to ramp up their misogyny and harassment of her.
While being true, the game's journalist in question, Nathan Grayson, never actually directly reviewed Depression Quest, he did, however, write several articles naming Zoe Quinn and Depression Quest, both by name, both with links to either her website or her game's website in other articles that he had written previously, most notably during the failed Polaris Game Jam, where he instantly leapt to her side in the so-called issues of harassment during that event.
And started sending her very abusive messages and threatened her life, found her phone number and her address and published them online, forced her to leave her home and stay with friends. And apparently, the whole thing was obviously quite stressful for her.
And that was a dick move from the select few individuals who chose to do it. And given the massive history that we have of gamers going out and killing people in the games media industry and games designers over things that they don't like, she was right to feel unsafe. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's never happened before.
The gamers then came up with the Gamergate hashtag as a way to really obviously cover up violently misogynistic harassment with the idea that this is all just about ethics in video game journalism, despite the fact that they were continuing to attack the female video game developer while never actually going after the reviewer who, again, did not actually review her game.
I'm not entirely sure where to begin here, so instead I drew this picture. No one has mentioned Zoe Quinn in Gamergate for weeks. Currently, she is actually referred to as literally who, because she is so irrelevant to the entire scope of the issue at hand. Yes, she was somewhat the fulcrum at the beginning. She was the pebble that caused the avalanche. However, since then, Gamergate has expanded outwards to cover a variety of other things. Most notably, it's sort of looking at the issue of games journalists sponsoring, say, a games developer, and then if the games developer doesn't deliver the product as they would like it, they simply say, well, guess what? I'm not going to review your product, or I'm going to give you a bad review, or you're going to get no press coverage until you start dancing to our tune because I am paying you to do so. And then there's the issue of the narrative being pushed by all of these big games journalist things, such as the dozen or so articles that all came out on the same day calling gamers dead, saying that the gamers don't have to be your demographic when you're trying to sell games, and gamers are all misogynistic scum, and all of these sorts of things, and it points to a very clear web of a pushed narrative here, and all you have to do is look up the gaming list, Games Journo Pros. All these gaming journalists who do talk to each other, who do expressly have conversations with each other about what they are all going to be publishing that week when they are supposed to all be independent bodies coming from independent places with independent opinions.
When people saw through that trick, they came up with the notyourshield hashtag, in which they created sock puppets pretending to be women and minorities who also supported the Gamergate hashtag.
And look at this veritable smorgasbord of people of colour, women and trans folk. Every single one of them a patriarchal, misogynistic white male. And as a side note, I really can't stand the term people of colour. It reminds me of the old times when anyone who wasn't white was referred to as the coloureds. Incredibly racist and bigoted.
As if transparent misogyny and poor arguments would suddenly make sense if only they came from an oppressed minority.
Why not? That's pretty much how feminism works.
It's the Twitter equivalent of saying, oh, I can't be racist. I have a black friend who I won't name who totally laughed at this joke.
Hey, Tyrese loves all my jokes.
There are hundreds of pages of chat logs showing the gamers dreaming up these overly complex misogynistic operations. You can see them at sites like We Hunted the Mammoth. I'll include a link below where they do an admirable job of sorting through all of that dreck to point out the really horrible bits.
Shock Horror, a radical feminist anti-male website, cherry-picks examples and then takes them entirely out of context to prove their point.
So I won't spend much time on that.
Yeah, you've been out of the kitchen for way too long already.
What I do want to talk about is that there really are serious problems with ethics in video game journalism. However, it doesn't necessarily have much to do with female indie game developers having friends and lovers within the video game industry.
So you don't think that people exchanging sex and money for favours in the video games industry is in any way a problem? Nice to see that you fully support nepotism. Hey, if you blow me right now, I will give you an extra subscriber on YouTube and totally donate to your Patreon.
Back in 2011, the Redner Group made the huge mistake of publicly tweeting their plan to blacklist any reviewers who gave bad reviews to their game Duke Nukem.
I actually have nothing else more to contribute here, because actually the next several minutes of this video go on to make several very good points about review embargoes and various other problems like that are actual issues within the gaming industry. So well done, Rebecca Watson, only half of your video was a complete failure. Can I also point out, crazy expensive Apple laptop next to an empty series of bookshelves? Nice to see that you're well educated across a variety of subjects there, Rebecca.